Hi, I'm Jarl with Verdigris. Thanks for taking a minute to learn how to properly install the Verdigris Energy Data Gateway. Today, we're going to go over everything that you need to know in order to install the gateway, bring it online, and validate that the data is flowing correctly. Let's get started with an overview of the equipment that you'll be installing. First, we have the Energy Data Gateway. Each gateway can support monitoring up to 42 circuits. That's 21 CTs per chain. Here are the two chain ports that you'll be using to connect the gateway to the CTs you'll install on the panel. Chain 1 is on the left, and chain 2 is on the right. Each chain has a male and female plug. The male is the beginning of the chain. You also have the voltage tap ports, labeled neutral, A, B, and C. On the side, you have your status indicator lights, as well as the label with the unique serial number. On the bottom, you've got the power rocker switch, a barrel jack port that you can use to provide alternate power in case your panel isn't energized yet, an Ethernet port, an SD card port. Make sure that the SD card is fully seated. It can get jostled when it gets shipped. We've got the setup button. When the gateway's powered on, you can double tap that and it'll rebroadcast the Wi-Fi setup signal. You've also got the external antenna port here, and you can use that to install the paddle antenna that it comes with. You just twist that on there. If you're having low signal and you need to get a little extra range, you can use an extension. So just twist that on there, and you can put the antenna on top. Here is the 5-volt USB alternate power supply. So you just plug that end in there and then plug this into any powered USB. Then we've also got these chain extension cables. You have a few different lengths. You have 20 centimeters, you've got 1 meter, and you've got 3 meters. You're going to mount the gateway through this back hole. You can use the included chase nipple and lock nut in order to go through there. Once inside the panel, you'll connect to a couple different size CTs. We have Smart CTs, which can monitor up to 90 amps. All of our CTs are split core, so you don't have to remove any wires. You just pull the tab, that'll open up the clip, you clip over the conductor, snap it shut. The CT has a female port on the base and then the male pigtail sticking out the side. You can daisy chain these pretty easily inside of a panel. So go. Just click them in like that. Like that. Then you've got the high current interface module. This is a device that allows you to bring in the bare metal leads of the larger CTs into the chain. You can mechanically fasten it through the hole in the center. It also has a really strong magnet that you can put on the side of the panel. It's got the male and female chain cables, as well as 3 CT ports. So we've got CT1, 2, and 3. There's also a status indicator light at each of those. And you can use your thumbnail or a tip of a pen, and you can depress that spring, and that'll allow you to release and insert the bare metal lead. Put it in there, press it in there, and when you're installing them, you want to actually double check, give each of them a little tug independently of the other to make sure that they're fully seated. These are the Hinged CTs. They can monitor loads up to 250 amps. You'll see the arrow on the Smart CTs. We also have an arrow, and the Rogowski coil, we also have an arrow. The CTs need to be pointing towards the load. In order to open up these guys, you just lightly lift that up, flip it open, put the conductor inside of the hole, and then click it shut, Make sure, give it a little wiggle, make sure it's solid. These Hinged CTs can handle up to 1-inch diameter conductors. For larger switch gears, coil CTs can go up to 7 inches in diameter. All right, let's get started with the installation. First, wear all the proper PPE. Next, you're going to mount your gateway. In this instance, we're going to be mounting it in an enclosure. You can see that we have a back panel there, and we use the chase nipple and lock nut to mount through the hole in the back of the gateway. You can also use the gateway to flush mount it on the side of a panel, and that's a bit easier to do. Then you're going to run your conduit and pull all of the phases that you'll be monitoring, including a neutral in split and single phase, back to the gateway. In this case, we're doing a 3-phase installation, and we don't actually need a neutral, so we're using a splicing connector in order to connect the phase A from the panel into ports neutral and A at the voltage taps. These voltage taps provide the 0 ohm resistance that we need in order to cross-reference that with the electromagnetic field of the current transformers. The gateway is actually powered through port B here, so if you're doing a single phase installation, then you're going to want to be putting the hot to the B phase. The voltage taps can be made anywhere that the power quality is the same as the energy that you're monitoring. The reason being, it's the no resistance index that the gateway needs in order to cross-reference with the electromagnetic field that the CTs are detecting. So don't go upstream or downstream of any transformer. The voltage taps can be made in a couple different ways. By far the most common is to land a breaker in the panel and pull each of the phases that you're monitoring. You can also tap off the bus bars or use an insulation piercing connector. Those are really good for cases where you can't shut off power and you don't have a place to land a breaker. So here's an example of that. You just torque down to the proper specs here and sink your teeth into your conductor, and it'll give you a pigtail that you can then run back to the gateway voltage tap ports. Here are the configurations for each type of panel. Single phase, you're going to land the hot to the B port and the neutral to the neutral. Split phase, you'll land A to A and B to B. For a 3-phase installation, phase A from the panel will feed the neutral and A ports at the gateway voltage taps, using the included splicing connector, then B to B and C to C. When you're pulling your chain wires, you want to make sure that you mark them. I recommend marking the chain 1 ports with electrical tape on each side so that you can differentiate them and you don't swap them up when you get them back to the gateway. So the best practice for installing and pulling the chain cables, mark each side of chain 1 with electrical tape. Then chain 2, you don't need to mark it at all. And when you're pulling it, you're going to be pulling it through minimum 1-inch conduit. So it's a lot easier if you stagger them, tape it up, and then tape your electrical wire, pull it all in one. Next, we're going to install the chains. The gateway has 2 chain ports. Chain 1 is on the left, chain 2 is on the right. So we're going to unplug the male pigtail out of the female chain port. This will be the beginning of our chain. So the CT closest to this pigtail is going to be the first CT in the chain. Then we're going to bring it over, plug it into the female end of the extension cable, make sure it clicks, and then we'll follow that over to our male end of the chain extension cable over here. Then we're going to install our CTs. Hinged CTs, we're going to use our fingernail just to pop open the side of it on each one of those. And we're going to come over here, make sure our arrow is pointing the correct direction. All of our CTs have an arrow on them. The arrow points towards the load, so you want to make sure that it's pointing towards the right direction. So in this case, we're going to use these Hinged CTs to monitor the feeder wires. So this whole panel is the load. All of our larger CTs are connected to the chain using an interface module. The interface module has a male and female chain port, and it also has 3 CT ports. And in each of those CT ports, we've got a positive and negative terminal. There's just like a little spring in there. You just use your thumbnail to press on it, and then you can put the bare metal lead from each of the larger CTs on there. You can either cut off the extra or bundle it up. And then the interface module, you can either mechanically fasten it with the hole in the center. It's also got a really strong magnet that you can just put on the side of the panel. And then we're going to install our Smart CTs. These are your Smart CTs. These also just have male port, female port to connect it to the chain, and then it's a split core also, so you just pull this little tab and it opens up. So we're just going to take the Smart CT, clip it over our conductor. When installing them, it can be helpful to stagger them a little bit, but then they do stack up on each other nicely once they're already installed. And the text is going to be upside down if you're installing on the left side of the panel. That's fine. The arrow points towards the load. And we're going to use a smaller, this is the 1 meter chain extension cable, and we're going to use that to bridge this little gap over here, and then we're going to plug that into the female port of the CT, first Smart CT. And then we're going to daisy chain those by taking the male pigtail and putting it into the next one down. Make sure you hear audible clicks. Now we are going to connect our chain extension cable. So male end here to the female end of the extension cable. Bring that over to the male end here. Plug that into the interface module. Now, this interface module has the first 3 CTs in the chain. Then we're going to follow the male pigtail over to the extension cable and to the CT 4, 5, and 6. Now, you want to be really careful. If you're skipping any breakers here that you're not monitoring, you want to make sure that you map the phase correctly when you're filling out your configuration sheet. So we'll take 4, 5, and 6. Those are all chained together. We'll take the male pigtail, connect that to the female end of the chain extension cable, back here to the male end, where we'll plug into the female end of the gateway. Now we have a continuous loop. That's our first chain. We've got 6 CTs on it, and the interface module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the Smart CTs. All right, to summarize, you want to make sure your arrows are pointing towards the load. For feeders, that's towards the breakers. For individual loads, that's going to be from the breaker to the load. It's okay for the text to be upside down on the left side. On the interface module, you want to make sure that all of the bare metal leads are tested to make sure that they're not loose. And you also want to make sure that you test all of the connections with your chain cable. Then you're going to want to make sure that you have installed the proper voltage tap wiring. So for 3-phase, you're going to make sure that you have a jumper between neutral and A, so that phase A from the panel is feeding both the neutral and A port at the voltage taps. And each gateway can handle up to 42 CTs, so that's 21 CTs on each chain. If you go over that, the voltage checks that you'll do later will fail. And then you can use whatever combination of the chain cables that you want, but the maximum chain loop length is 8 meters or 24 feet. So if you're centrally locating the gateway, you can go 12 feet to the left and 12 feet to the right. Once you've completed the physical installation and the gateway's powered on, you'll be able to use the Verdigris Mobile App in order to run setup and configuration. Make sure to have your scoping sheet on hand so that you can upload your breaker labeling. Let's run through the app. First, you'll select the gateway that you want to set up. The app will guide you through the steps to establish connectivity, do chain checks, label the breakers, and do your voltage checks. The SD card is pre-installed in the gateway. In the rare event it is not secured, you will see a notification. Select your primary connectivity method from the options. Then work through the steps in the app to establish the connection. Next, the system will automatically confirm the daisy chain connection, checking to ensure all CTs are securely clipped in and that there are no more than 21 CTs on each chain. After the chain check, you'll label the breakers. You can download preset labeling data from the QR code on the scoping sheet. You'll be asked to confirm the information pulled from the scoping sheet, or you can edit all fields if needed. Then move on to the most important step. Set up the breakers and label the CTs. This is the step that creates a digital copy of the panel and enables remote troubleshooting. Each CT slot indicates the detected CT size and digitally maps to the physical location in the daisy-chained order. For your convenience, 3 large CTs are automatically grouped together as 3-phase breakers, while all Smart CTs are left as single-phase breakers. Where needed, change the breaker sizing by simply dragging and dropping the CTs in or out of the group. Start labeling from CT1. Update the CT size if needed. Select the correct label. Select the correct circuit phase, A, B, or C, it's installed on, and enter the breaker trip rating or the breaker size. To help make the process go faster, when you select CT1, the light on the actual Smart CT or the interface module port will light up, making it easy to ensure you're applying the correct label. Then move on to the next CT. You will only need to select the phase for multi-phase breakers. Continue through chain 1, then move on to chain 2. If there are no CT connections on a chain, the setup tool will let you know. Once you go through both chains and fill out all phases, labels, and CT sizes for large CTs, the labeling is done. It's time to turn on the panel and return to the app to complete final checks and submit the project for completion. After you safely turn on the panel, the setup tool will check the voltages, then ask you to confirm whether the voltage measurements meet your expectations. If the measurements do not meet your expectations, simply click Recheck Voltage to resample. If the problem persists, check Skip Voltage Check to complete the process. When you submit the project, this will be flagged and recorded. Next, the app will run a final review. This gives you an opportunity to make any final edits you need to before timestamping and submitting the installation settings and quality. Enter your name and email, along with any optional notes you'd like to share for the project records. This can include helpful information like discrepancies in labeling or feedback on your experience. If you are in an area with low or no connectivity, don't worry. You can review all the information, save, and submit later. The app will direct you to the home page, and this gateway will display as an in-progress status. Once you are in a well-connected area, return to the Verdigris app, select this gateway, and click Submit. Once ready, click Submit to log the installation complete status for this particular gateway. A PDF report will be sent to you and to Verdigris, and your app will return to the home page. This particular gateway will now show a submitted status. After you're done with the installation, you want to throw a sticker on there so that other electricians will know that this panel is being monitored. That's it, we're done. Thanks for your time. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions that you might have. We want to make sure your installation goes well.